It is my belief that Trinidad and Tobago, the vast majority of our citizens are law-abiding citizens and civic-minded citizens and persons who are, by and large, concerned about the welfare of Trinidad and Tobago. Unfortunately, there's a very small element in our society that is determined to continue to participate in criminal activity. And the criminal activity that unfortunately at times overflows out into the daily lives of law-abiding citizens. We are all well aware that there are certain areas in Trinidad and Tobago that unfortunately these criminal elements have seen it fit to gather and to use as their base of operations. We in the government have been concerned, of course, about crime for some time. And what I can tell you as the Minister of National Security, and since assuming this portfolio, I insist on weekly meetings with the heads of the national security apparatus, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, the Defense Force, our intelligence agencies, the prison service. Sometimes we invite the fire service, customs, immigration, just to make sure that everyone is on the same page and to drive and ensure that intelligence is being shared between the various agencies. Over the past couple days, and in fact the past couple weeks, unfortunately we've seen an upsurge in some of the criminal activity, and in particular some murders of persons, some of whom may be innocent and some of whom may be participating and living a life of crime. Even before what happened in the last 48 hours, there were a number of preparations taking place with respect to how we would launch certain intelligence-driven operations and how we would deal with some of these criminal elements. What I'd like to say and why I've asked for this press conference today is I've just come from a meeting with all of the heads of security from the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and our intelligence services. And in particular, at the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service level, the Commissioner of Police, Commissioner Griffith, Deputy Commissioner of Police, Mr. Dulal Chan, and then heads of certain divisions, as well as heads of certain specialist units, were present in the meeting a short while ago. On the Defense Force, we had the Chief of Defense Staff and some of his officers there as well. What needs to take place is that the law-abiding citizens need to be given some level of assurance and an extra effort made with respect to increasing the intelligence-driven operations. What I want to assure the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago is that we are not sitting idly by. Intelligence has been gathered over a number of months for the preparation of certain operations. When these operations are launched, there is going to be a level of inconvenience, unfortunately, to the law-abiding citizens in particular areas. I ask the law-abiding citizens to bear with us as we launch certain operations to ensure their safety and their security. And we are well aware of who the law-abiding citizens are and the need to assist them and to offer levels of protection for them. However, the only way to push back at the criminal element is for us to change the narrative. And that is what will be happening. It is no longer acceptable for our law enforcement agencies and the other bodies to be reacting to what is taking place. It is time that we dictate the pace and we go on the offensive and we do all that we can with all of the state's resources to ensure that the criminal element is beaten into submission. So what I'm coming here today to tell you all is that very shortly there will be increased intelligence-driven operations aimed at achieving exactly what I've just described. Additionally, the anti-gang legislation specifically provides for these types of situations, as I was just telling the officers. There are specific charges that can be laid under the anti-gang legislation that were designed for situations dealing with gangs. Searches of places dealing with gangs. Detention of persons dealing with persons who are related to gang activity. If you threaten people, you try to intimidate people, you try to encourage people to join gangs, all of these are charges under the anti-gang legislation. Allow me to place on the record once again the fact that there have been a number of charges under the anti-gang legislation that are currently before the courts and being prosecuted. After the first wave of charges, a second set were done. We have also utilized the detention orders under the anti-gang legislation, which allows the police service to go to court and to apply to a judge for additional time up to 14 days. I believe it's 14 or 21 days at maximum to detain someone outside of the regular 24 to 48 hour period. I have today reminded our law enforcement officers of this legislation and the asset and tool that it is for them as they begin the preparation to have a surge and a pushback with respect to the gang and criminal activity that unfortunately has become commonplace in certain areas of Trinidad and Tobago. As the Minister of National Security and the government's representative at that level, I have asked for the full participation of our law enforcement agencies and the other arms of the national security to launch these operations to push back hard at the criminal element. Again, it is worthwhile repeating that we understand and appreciate that in some of these locations, the vast majority of persons may be law-abiding citizens, and there will be some level of inconvenience. But I assure them that we are doing this for the purpose of attempting to make their neighborhoods, their communities, safer and more secure. I would like to commend the men and women in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the Defense Force, the intelligence services, for the yeoman's service and work that they have been doing over the past few months. As I have been saying, and as you've heard the Commissioner of Police say within the past few months, operations need to be intelligence driven. The criminal element needs to be inconvenienced. And to the criminal element, I make absolutely no apologies for the inconveniences that they will face and the type of behavior that they will face and the pushback that they will feel in the coming weeks and months. I have asked our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the Defense Force to ensure that we sustain these operations. And I tell the population that we are very aware of a number of different circumstances surrounding what you've been seeing going on. And also, we have intelligence as to why certain activity was taking place. So law enforcement are prepared to do what needs to be done within the confines of the law. And they are going to do this pushback on behalf of us, the law-abiding citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. So this morning, I tell the people of Trinidad and Tobago that our police service will be working to protect and serve, ably supported by the Defense Force, provided with the intelligence from our intelligence services, and that we, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, can look forward to a new type of policing and a new type of operations. You all have begun to see it over the past few months. A lot of the operations that have been taking place and the success of these operations is due to the fact that they're intelligence driven, we're sharing information, we're ensuring that persons are on the same page. And importantly, that it is not being leaked out there, and that they're being properly protected, the information beforehand, etc. So, today I say that the government of Trinidad and Tobago is not prepared, this administration is not prepared to protect anyone. I've seen it suggested that we are afraid of certain elements in society. I can give you the assurance without fear of contradiction, having had many conversations with the chairman of the National Security Council, on behalf of National Security Council, the chairman and myself, that we are not fearful or intimidated by anyone. I certainly am afraid of no criminal element in Trinidad and Tobago. And as I told the law enforcement agencies and our men and women in the defense force, the police service, and our intelligence services a short while ago, I support them fully. I support fully what it is they're going to do in terms of their intelligence-driven operations. They have the full support of the government, the Ministry of National Security, the Minister of National Security, and most importantly of me as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, as we begin the hard pushback on the criminal element to change the narrative and to go on the offensive. The government is not going to sit back and let things continue as they have been. I have heard the desperate cries by a number of failed politicians and other politicians. It's been brought to my attention. And it's quite ironic that one of them sat in the chair of Minister of National Security at a certain period and did nothing to better it. But today is not about blame. Today is not about looking back in the past. Today is putting down a marker here in Trinidad and Tobago as we go forward, and to tell the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, bear with the inconvenience that you may feel in the coming weeks and in the coming months, but understand that these operations are being conducted to ensure and to improve the safety and security of the citizens in Trinidad and Tobago. We will be utilizing increased amounts of technology. We will be utilizing certain of our special divisions, special officers and men and women as we go forward with these intelligence-driven operations. It is very difficult as a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago, and in particular as the Minister of National Security, to see when innocent people are sometimes killed. And what I'd like to say is that we are doing everything that we can as the government to support the men and women who are charged with the constitutional responsibility and duties to protect and serve, and to ensure that the others, for example, the Trinidad and Tobago Defense Force, or Coast Guard, or Air Guard, provide sufficient support for them. We're coming up to the carnival period. I'd also like to give you all the assurance that since the last quarter of last year, we had begun preparations for carnival. So it is not something that is new to us. There have been a number of security improvements. I'm quite happy to see the way it is progressing. There are meetings taking place with the various band leaders, etc., to explain to them the important roles that they play, and for us all to be on the same page. This is not just up to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the Defense Force. Revelers, the band leaders, all have a part to play. We're looking at the vehicles that will be used, as you all are aware, during carnival periods, who will be driving these vehicles, the routes that will be used, every single carnival event that is taking place as well, the major ones that have the presence of police officers. We ensure that their command centers, there's intelligence beforehand, that we look at the location, we work out plans if something were to, God forbid, happen at these locations, etc. So I'm quite pleased at the work and preparatory work that is taking place and will continue to take place as we go closer and closer to the carnival period and days of carnival. So I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to address you this morning. And really the purpose was to let you know that the government has been working with our agencies, and in particular the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, over the past few months in terms of assisting them in planning operations, etc., and planning the policy and how best to drive intelligence-driven operations. You all would have seen within the last few weeks the Commissioner of Police Chief of Defense Staff accompany me to a number of meetings in the United Kingdom. Those meetings were very specific meetings with the various intelligence agencies and to try and get assistance. And we have received assistance from the various agencies in the United Kingdom in terms of training, in terms of intelligence sharing, just in terms of building the relationship as we better outfit men and women in the police service and our defense force to protect and serve us as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much. I'll take some questions.
Minister, good morning.
Good morning.
You indicated that there may be some level of inconvenience for citizens in certain areas. Is government planning to impose a limited state of emergency in these areas?
No.
Good morning. A lot of the inconvenience suffered by law-abiding citizens has to do also with the attitude and the less than professionalism from the police officers. Is there any training by these officers, maybe perhaps in PR or something like that, where they can be able to mitigate some of the inconvenience to the law-abiding citizens?
It is something that I've been discussing with Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. You have a slightly different perspective. We've all seen the videos, the many videos that have gone viral when our men and women in the police service go into certain areas to make inquiries, sometimes to make arrests, etc. From the ones that I have seen, it certainly doesn't appear as though it's the police service who are being less than courteous. So that was part of the discussion this morning, and it has been a continuing discussion. Persons need to understand that when the police service go on operations and they go into communities to conduct inquiries, etc., it is unacceptable to verbally abuse police officers. It is unacceptable to stand in the way of police officers doing their job and their duty to country. Those are actually crimes. So I think we will also see a difference with how that is approached. I've told the police service, whilst you continue to be courteous, whilst we continue to respect always the rights of citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago must also respect the police service, and they must also respect that when the police are carrying out their duties, they are not to obstruct them. With the day and age of camera phones and this type of devices, it has changed certain things. I saw an interesting video, I think it was last week, where a police officer was using his camera phone and the citizen scampering, saying, "Don't put me on the camera, I don't want my picture taken out." And that was a good example of the dichotomy and the dilemma and flipping it onto the other side. So I am sure that our police service will be courteous. We have discussed certain elements of training. But what I do is I ask citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, don't get in the way of police conducting their duties and our law enforcement officers conducting their duties. Be responsible. Your job is not to protect the criminal element. And I stand fully with the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the men and women who go out there and put their lives on the line, literally on a daily basis, whilst they're conducting their duties, and ask them to continue doing what it is they're doing. And I'm asking citizens, don't get in the way of police officers conducting their duty and their jobs in an efficient and in a lawful manner. If you do so, the police should arrest you. You can be charged for it, obstructing police in the conduct of their duties, and you should be arrested and go and face the courts and explain to the courts why, when the police came to do their duties, came to arrest persons, came to conduct inquiries, you behaved in that manner. And those same videos can be used in the future as evidence against the persons who are getting in the way of police activity.
Good morning, Ryan Hamilton, Davis, Trinidad Newsday. Two quick questions. First one, with regard, you made mention of it being an unfortunate situation when innocent people are killed. Just tacking on that, there was an incident just over the weekend where a person, an electrician, was shot by police, and he unfortunately died as a result. And family claim that he was not only innocent, but he was the wrong person, which a warrant was executed on. I was wondering if you could comment on that situation, or do you think that police have, think police have any kind of a responsibility to take a little bit of slighter patience before acting in such a fatal manner?
Okay, I am not aware of the circumstances surrounding that particular incident. Police always have to be careful and err on the side of caution when conducting their duties. Every time an innocent citizen's life is lost is a tragedy for the country, in my humble opinion. There are both internally and externally bodies set up to investigate those types of incidents, the Police Complaints Authority and the Police Standards Bureau within the police service. So I assume there are live investigations going on, and I wouldn't want to comment on it. What I would say is that we do need to be careful when conducting these duties, etc. And I wouldn't put it any further than that.
Well, I know I said two, but you just mentioned something that tack on a new one. The Police Complaints Authority and, well, the checks and balance divisions, basically for the police service, there has been complaints that there is small numbers and, they just don't have enough bodies to do the actual work. How do you comment on that?
I don't think the time I have been in government, I've heard a single agency anywhere in Trinidad and Tobago say that they have sufficient resources. At the end of the day, thankfully, killings as a result of police operations or by police officers are small in number, fairly small in number. So these bodies just have to press on with the resources they have and carry out their duties, etc. I mean, we all face that perennial dilemma of I could do with more resources, etc. But what you must do is carry on with what you have and get the job done.
Okay, and last one, I promise. Apparently, since 2008, the GLSC has been operating contrary to how they were supposed to be. I'll just leave it as that. How does this affect the Ministry of National Security and their operations? Catching criminals, dealing with crimes.
I don't see them as being connected. In fact, the Attorney General, I believe, had a press conference yesterday, quite a lengthy one, where he addressed those issues. That's really within his purview and his remit. There's been nothing that has come up in the national security space and arena that has been affected by that situation you've just described. In fact, I saw the Attorney General on television last night talking about a section in the Interpretation Act that corrects that type of situation that had taken place with the Judicial and Legal Services Commission. And he said, if you required 4 for quorum and these, so I think he's adequately addressed it. At a national security level, we do have some level of concern with the criminal justice system. I know that the Attorney General's office has been working with the judiciary. I know that the judiciary has been looking at addressing these things. But the criminal justice system does need some work, that's the truth. And they do need to find new ways to get things moving.
Minister, good morning. This sort of Operation Strike Back, could you care to say exactly what areas will be affected by this Operation Strike Back? Or I remember you saying that you have a certain amount of information that you give out to the public, but you mentioned that certain areas around the country will be affected. I mean, all of Trinidad and Tobago is not hotspots areas, but what areas can you say will be affected by this Operation Strike Back, if you will?
This falls into one of those times and one of those categories where I am not going to divulge the particulars at this time. Those are operational matters, so at the appropriate time, I'm sure that the Commissioner of Police and others will address it.
Do you not see sort of similarities between this quote-unquote Operation Strike Back and...
I didn't call it Operation Strike Back.
Well, no, that's why it's
right.
Quote-unquote. The state of emergency back in 2011, do you not see some sort of similarity between the two?
Absolutely not. Your colleague had asked whether we were contemplating limited states of emergency. A state of emergency is a completely different concept in law. What it does is it suspends your constitutional rights in an area or in a country, depending on where you want to declare a state of emergency. That's not happening on this occasion. What we're doing is we're working within the confines of the law, and you're going to see a serious push by the men and women in Trinidad and Tobago Police Service with the support of other agencies as they push back and change the whole landscape on this criminal element.
Minister Young, would you say presently the situation in Sealot is under control, and has the possibility of Defence Force patrols been considered in Sealot?
I wouldn't say that the position in Sealot is under control. No. Part of the policy with respect to these operations is the support, as you've heard me say, of the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force. So I've asked the Trinidad and Tobago Defence Force to provide support for the police service, and that will include both patrols as well as participating in a support position on these operations. But I think it is a necessary element at this time to have the Defence Force assist with some of the patrols.
Minister Young, good morning. Just in your relation to your position as minister, there was an incident last night where Private O'Gara was shot while driving along the Eastern Main Road.
Where, who was shot? Sorry. Okay, yes,
member of the Defence Force.
Yes, I got a report on that.
So it's just in relation to that. Do you have any comments on that?
I am not aware. The report I got was exactly as you've just suggested. I don't know if he was driving at the time or he had come to a stop, etc. A loud explosion was heard, and then it turned out he was shot in his arm. The investigations with respect to it are continuing, so I don't know what the circumstances were. If it was just an unfortunate stray bullet, if it was directed at the soldier, etc. That is part of why we're going to be doing what we're doing in the next few weeks and months. There are too many illegal firearms in Trinidad and Tobago. You all would have noticed, fortunately, a better lockdown of our borders within the past couple of months when I had announced that we will be doing it. It's quite interesting, you now see videos of persons complaining with the Coast Guard vessel outside there, they're not allowing this stuff to come in, etc. The lockdown of our borders, and we are also going to be focusing on our legal ports, the airport and the other seaports, etc. That is going to help us to some level, from a systematic point of view, prevent further firearms or the amount that were coming in from before. But as I've told the men and women of our law enforcement and our intelligence, these arms and ammunition have to be somewhere. Just picking up 1 or 2 or 3 or 4, in my view, we have to do better than that. So let's lead some intelligence-driven operations and find these stashes and go after them.
Just in relation to the follow-up where you made mention of the increased presence of the Coast Guard, how is the ministry dealing with the influx of Venezuelans or persons from the South American continent?
Again, once we had started to tighten up on the borders, there has been a reduction in the number of illegal immigrants entering, etc. But as things worsen with our neighbor, we suspect you will see more persons coming in. The Ministry of National Security has been mandated by the Prime Minister to develop the policy with respect to the registration of the Venezuelans and how we deal with them. So as I reported to the Prime Minister within the last couple of days, we are currently formulating that policy. In the first instance, it will be, in my view, or it should be, in my view, a registration of all Venezuelans that are here. Call upon all Venezuelans in Trinidad and Tobago to come and register so we have them in the system, etc. Because you hear all sorts of numbers being bandied about. And just by looking at immigration records is not going to be sufficient. So the first part of that policy that I am to take to Cabinet, and you're getting a sneak preview, is that we will deal with the registration of all that are here, and then we will take other further decisions as to how we deal with them.
Okay. And just any updates on the 19 young women who were rescued last week?
Yes, they have continued to be receiving medical attention, psychological attention. I got, and I'd like to thank the Minister of Social Development for her assistance. I reached out to her on Saturday night asking for more social workers to assist. They continue to be housed at a safe house, and we're processing it and hoping that the information we get from there will help with further intelligence-driven operations as we go after persons who engage in illegal activity, human trafficking and the likes. But at this stage, the girls are being looked after.
And lastly, from me at least, I like to look at things at statistically based. Sorry. We've had approximately 70 murders compared to the 77 for around the same period last year. So how is I know you said that your operations will be continued, starting anew from now, the aim, but how is the government reacting to the current situation?
I don't have in front of me today what the exact number is. If you like statistics and you like data, one of the things you'll know is we have to be accurate. It is coming up to 70. I don't think we've reached there. I don't have the comparison as to what it was last year. I know at the end of January there was a reduction in numbers, but what we've seen is a spike over the past few days, which is one of the reasons why I've brought forward and asked them to drive these operations a lot quicker than we were intending to do. It is not something we're just going to sit by and allow to run away. I can tell you that unfortunately some of the recent ones are gang related. That does not make them any more acceptable. And that is, quite frankly, that's the reason why we've brought forward the operations, and we're going to do what we're about to do.
Minister, 2 questions. What is your take on the SRP being one of 4 suspects in the abduction of the Venezuelan woman? And secondly, you said that government intends to push back against the criminal elements. Their reaction might be, we will push back even harder. Tell me how you all intend to treat with that, and obviously this may have collateral damage in it.
Okay. Let's deal with the first question. It is always very upsetting and disheartening, disappointing when you see law enforcement officers participating in criminal activity. It's not the first time. As you said it reminded me, for example, of Natalie Polony kidnapping, and there was an SRP involved in that as well. We all know that there are bad apples and there are bad elements, corrupt elements, in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Fortunately, they are a very small minority. The Commissioner of Police has been working on finding and weeding those elements out. With respect to the pushback, it's not the government. The government is supporting. At the end of the day, it's up to the law enforcement agencies, the defense force, etc. to stand fully behind them. And as I told men and women in the room this morning, I left a short while ago before coming here, I will stand in front of them. So me personally, not the least bit fearful and intimidated by these criminal elements. The operations will be controlled operations. Never like to think or talk about any collateral damage. I certainly wouldn't want to call it upon us. But the truth is, Trinidad and Tobago, unless we take this stand now, unless we change the way of doing business, which is what I was telling them a short while ago, it is not business as usual. Unless we push back hard now, take the country back now, and the stars are aligning, in my view, we cannot allow it to get worse. It will only get worse. And we can't allow it to get worse and for the criminal element to become even more emboldened. So we will push back. We will push back hard. When I say we, that's not the government. I stand with the men and women in the police service, the defense force, or intelligence agencies, and they will do so in the safest possible manner.
Minister Young, some people might suggest that if you get rid of certain gang members and they disappear, others would just simply take their place. Correct. What is being done to address the deeper social issues?
So here at the ministry, there are a number of programs. I'm hoping that we will develop and launch another one very soon in the coming months. But you're right. I mean, you have to provide persons with opportunities and different options to a way of life of crime, and that is something we're very conscious of. So the community policing, the educational system, all these things are important. Getting the police youth clubs play an important part. I've been speaking to the defense force about getting the whole cadet force up and going again. There is no one pill that's going to solve everything. So you're quite right. There are a number of different, you have to hit it from a number of different sides and with a number of different programs. And as I told the persons in the room this morning, we are not the first to face this. You had big cities in developed countries, New York, years ago, probably before your time, was one of the worst cities. to live in, and then the crime was running rampant. You just have to take the bull by the horns and turn it around. You have to change the initiative. You have to hit them hard, turn it around. Chicago in the United States is one of the highest per capita of murder. And you wouldn't think so. Chicago is a very developed city in a developed country. So it's not, we are not the first place to be facing this. So it depends on the attitude. We have to change our attitude. We can't be reactive anymore. We have to be offensive. Let the criminal element be the ones reacting to what we are doing, not the other way around. Okay? I'd like to thank you all very... Yes, sir.
And criminal elements?
I certainly hope so. When I was in a different place and playing a different role, I had assisted in driving a number of investigations, etc. I've heard the Commissioner of Police, and he has submitted to me, and I am going to approve it, that he wants to bring together the various, they're not divisions, the various departments. So the Fraud Squad, the Financial Intelligence Bureau, and these different divisions and departments to deal with white-collar crime, and call it the Financial Intelligence Division or something like that, if I remember correctly. That's something I fully support. In my conversations with the Commissioner of Police, and I don't get into the detail, he is going to be tackling white-collar crime the same way you see him leading the men and women pushing back at the other criminal elements in the streets. So I expect so.
Because on the ground, the social perception is that white-collar crime is also leading to a lot of crime, because you're not seeing anything happening against those who are involved in that kind of criminal activity.
And I agree with you completely, and that's why during the course of this morning, I repeated again, no one is above the law. And I actually said that again in the room before I came here. Do not be afraid of anyone from top to bottom. No one is above the law. No one will be protected under my watch. Whoever engages in criminal activity, they must feel the whole blunt of the law against them. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, thank you all very much for your time this morning. Have a good day.